The courtroom of the federal court in Boston was silent, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Then, an unexpected laugh broke this tense atmosphere. It wasn't just any laugh. It was that of Judge Richard Montgomery, a man known for his inflexible attitude and barely concealed disdain for anything unconventional. Before him stood Emma, a 16-year-old girl dressed in a slightly oversized suit borrowed from her mother. "Do you really want me to take seriously a complaint filed by a high school student regarding the constitutionality of a federal law?" the judge asked, wiping a tear of laughter from the corner of his eye. Emma clenched her fists under the podium, her heart racing, convinced that the entire room could hear it. Yet her voice, calm and determined, resonated. "Your Honor, the Constitution sets no age limit on defending one's fundamental rights. Today, I am here to represent an entire generation." Judge Montgomery, initially amused, tilted his head, his expression shifting from mockery to intrigued curiosity. "Very well, Miss Chen. You have 5 minutes to convince me not to dismiss this complaint." 3 months earlier, Emma had watched the snow fall through the window of her bedroom, constitutional law textbooks piling up on her desk. Her computer displayed the article that had triggered everything. Congress had just passed the Minor Digital Surveillance Act. As the only child of a law professor and a civil rights lawyer, Emma had grown up amidst legal discussions. Her mother often repeating that justice was not a privilege, but a right to be defended at all costs. This new law allowed schools to install surveillance software on students' devices, under the pretense of combating bullying. In reality, it opened the door to mass surveillance. Emma discovered that her own school was already preparing to implement this system. The principal had even praised Emma for her commitment, unaware that she viewed it as a threat. One evening, while helping her father tidy up the library, Emma stumbled upon an old file. It was the story of a high school girl from the 1960s who had challenged her school for violating her First Amendment rights. She had won. Emma then asked her father, "Can a minor really file a lawsuit in federal court?" "Technically, yes, with a legal representative, but it's very rare," replied James Shen, seeing the spark of determination in his daughter's eyes. He recognized that glimmer, identical to the one his late wife had when she found a cause to fight for. "If this law is unconstitutional, then someone has to challenge it, right?" Emma insisted. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Emma dedicated every free moment to studying case law on minors' privacy and the intricacies of constitutional amendments. At first, her father was hesitant, but he eventually became her most fervent supporter, reaching out to former students who had become lawyers to help her refine her arguments. "You need to understand," he explained one evening, "that this won't be like debates in high school. Federal judges are ruthless." Emma nodded, recalling a photo of her mother smiling in front of the Supreme Court on the day she won her first big case. "I know, Dad, but Mom always said that fear should never prevent us from doing what's right." On the day of filing the complaint, Emma, her father, and their attorney, Sarah Rodriguez, arrived at the courthouse. The clerks exchanged puzzled glances upon seeing a teenager filing a constitutional complaint. The first preliminary hearing was a real challenge. Judge Montgomery, known for his conservative reputation, seemed to take the matter lightly. "You claim that this law violates your rights because it allows your school to monitor your online activities?" he asked with disdain. "No, Your Honor," Emma replied. "I argue that this law turns every personal device into a government surveillance tool, without a warrant or probable cause. This is exactly what the Fourth Amendment is supposed to prevent." A murmur swept through the room, and the judge's smile slowly faded. The true scope of the case was revealed when an anonymous tip announced that the collected data was not only used to prevent bullying, but was also shared with federal agencies, creating detailed profiles of each student. Senator William Burke, the architect of the law, began criticizing Emma in the media, portraying her as an activist manipulated by radical groups. Journalists camped outside her house, and her social media accounts were hacked. One evening, Emma, overwhelmed, confided in her father. "I can't continue, Dad. It's too big for me." James sat beside her. "Your mother also thought some battles were too big. But she said what mattered was being right. I don't know what to do anymore, Emma whispered, tracing the letters engraved on her mother's gravestone. I feel like I'm lost in a storm, not knowing where to go. She stood up, determined. Emma began walking among the graves, recalling her mother's words. Cemeteries aren't places of sadness, but libraries of unfinished stories. Stopping in front of a large oak tree, she remembered a conversation she had with her mother shortly before her death. The law, my dear, is like constellations. From a distance, you only see bright dots, but upon closer inspection, you understand the lines that connect them. She took out her phone and began recording, letting the words flow. We are the first generation to have grown up with the internet as an extension of ourselves. Our thoughts, dreams, fears, all leave digital traces, like the pages of our modern diary. And now, they want to give every adult in a position of authority the key to that diary. Her voice grew stronger, fueled by her passion. Bullying exists, cyberviolence too. But the solution is not to turn every teenager into a suspect, to make every private message a potential piece of incriminating evidence. That's not the right approach. The cemetery caretaker walked by her, nodding in acknowledgement. Mom, you always said that the greatest injustices often begin with the best intentions. This law is presented as protection, but it poisons the trust between generations. It hinders our right to make mistakes, to experiment, to grow. Emma sat on a bench contemplating the lights of Boston. What scares me the most is not losing. It's winning, but not being up to what that victory would mean. Not knowing how to carry that message as it should be. A moment of silence settled as she listened to the rustling leaves. The caretaker returned, warning her that the cemetery would soon close. Emma stood up but continued recording. I think I understand what you meant, Mom. It's not the moment when we have the most fear that matters, but the moment when we accept that fear as part of the journey without it influencing our destination. Back at her mother's grave, she took out a photo she always kept with her. It was an image of Lisa Chen at 16 during her first public speech for her high school debate club. Tomorrow, I won't talk about case law or precedents. I'm going to talk about you, about me, about all those teenagers who deserve to find their voice without feeling watched by Big Brother. The sky was now dark, dotted with stars. Emma put away her phone and caressed her mother's gravestone one last time. I think I found my constellation, Mom. Back home, James Shen greeted her with a smile, ready to listen to everything she had to say. This wasn't just a case for Emma. It was a promise. The next day, the courtroom filled up again, but this time a lightness was palpable in the air. Emma stepped forward, her heart racing. She turned to the judge, but this time it was a determined gaze. Your Honor, I am not here to fight against adults. I am here to represent the future of my generation. The judge, after a moment of surprise, nodded slowly. Emma knew that this struggle was just the beginning, but for the first time she felt ready.